cover seed started about 4 years ago. My brother Brian and I have been farming here for a long time, and we started doing some cover crops. We got a SARE grant to do some cover crop research on how much moisture different crops use. We really liked what we saw after doing those different research projects, and we got kind of excited about the potential for this, but seed was really hard to find. And so we were going and getting seed and bringing it back, and other people were saying, well, hey, get some of that for us, get some of that for us. So we kind of said, well, maybe we can sell this stuff. And that was only 4 years ago when we started selling, and we started out with just selling seed to a few people, a few thousand pounds. And this year we'll have probably 1,000 customers in 40 states and probably move around 8 million pounds of seeds. One of the things why people order from us is because we have such a wide selection of different products. We've got over 50 different species that they can choose from, and we'll mix it up for their needs. I would say the SARE grant helped us get started. It's one of those things where for years we said we want to try some cover crops, and then when it gets to crunch time, it's like, we'll do that next year because we don't have time to do it now. Well, with the SARE grant, we had to do it because they'd given us money, we'd written this proposal. It forced us to get out there and do it, and not only plant the cover crops, but to really observe them, because we had these moisture sensors in, so we were checking them on a weekly basis, and we were monitoring the moisture levels. So it forced us to be out there in the plots, in the fields every week, looking and observing and watching and seeing what happened. We had some good field days from that. Lots of people came in and learned from that as well. And then it kind of gave us the motivation and encouragement to start green cover seed as well. Kind of our little slogan, I guess, is cover crop strategies for soil health. And that's really what we try to do for people is we want to help them to use cover crops in a strategic way to help improve the health of their soil. For some people, that's going to mean, maybe just putting cereal rye out there. For some people, it might mean a blend that has 15 different things in it. It all depends on what they're trying to accomplish, what their next crop is. There's so many factors that go into it. So with our experience, with what we've seen, the mistakes that we've made, we help people kind of navigate those waters and get started with developing a strategy to use cover crops to increase the health of their soil. But we really try to get people to focus on soil health as being the end goal and not just using cover crops. Well, like the video said, if it was not for SARE and that SARE grant, we very likely may not be here, because that really did give us the encouragement to go ahead and get started. And so what the part of the program that I'm going to share is our Smart Mix calculator. And Gail is going to help me out so I can kind of explain things here. But what this tool is, this is a tool that I had developed several years ago. Some of you may be familiar with the old version of it. We've gone through several different permutations of this. This is the newest version. My son has done all the programming on this. Everything I did was in Excel, and it was pretty good, but it was limited on what we could do. I'd taken it about as far as we could. So my son said, well, I think I can program that, Dad. I said, well, okay, if you think so, we can go. So what we're going to show you is where we're at. It's not quite there yet. We're getting close to having it out there on the website where everybody can get to it and use it. I think later this week we'll have it linked off of our website. There's still a few bugs that we're working out. But this thing now has about 20,000 lines of computer code and over 3 million data points in it. And as we go through this, I'll kind of show you the different things that it does. But what this tool does is it helps you build a mix. And it's called the Smart Mix calculator because our philosophy is the smartest mix for your field is the one that you design yourself, because nobody knows that field better than you. And you really should be doing the research and putting in the effort to determine what species you want in there. So this is a tool that just simply helps you do that. So Gail, go up to the top and let's see, let's hit F11, get a little more screen here. Okay, go up to where it says Start a Mix, clear up at the top, and we'll just start over. One of the new features that this version has is that you have to have an account So you can, when you get in here, you'll create an account. And the biggest advantage of that is going to be, is now after you submit orders, up at the top there, there's a little button for orders. You can go back in down the road 2-3 years later and look to see what you had done. And that's a big advantage, because before we always had to say, well, did you keep that email? Did I keep that email? And so we got to go back and kind of try to figure out what we did. So this way you'll be able to go back and look at your previous history. And I want to just point out too that you do not have to order seed from us in order to use this. This is out on the internet. It's free. And if you don't hit the submit button, I don't know that you were in there using it anyway, okay? Now, if you hit the submit button, then we'll probably get a hold of you to see if you actually wanted something. But you can use this, and you do not have to order seed. So it's out there to be used. So we're already logged in here under my account. And the first thing that you may notice is that, well, there's a disclaimer here that things may not work. But based on the zip code of 68928, it's always good. We'll probably leave that on there for quite a while. But when you establish an account, you're going to, of course, put in your address. And so then when you log back in, it knows your zip code. This is the zip code for Bladen. It knows my average annual rainfall is 26.73 inches. Again, these are all 30-year climate normals. My average first frost is around October 3rd. The last frost is around April 30th, and I'm plant hardiness zone 5B. And so it knows all of that information, plus it knows growing degree days, both base 40 and base 50, for all 45,000 zip codes in the United States. And that was kind of a big project, but fortunately my son had quite a bit of experience in geospatial programming, so he was able to pull all that information out of the various government websites that collect all that from weather stations. Now, I'm going to have Gail design a mix, and I'm going to talk as he does this. So he can use my account, but he's going to come down here and he's going to put in his own zip code. So go ahead and put in your zip code there, Gail. And when he does that, it knows that it's Emporia, Kansas. And his average annual rainfall, and again, this is not the last 3 years, this is 30 years, Gail. Wouldn't you like to see 37 inches again? He's got a longer growing season. His last frost, or his first frost, is around October 22nd. Mine was the first week in October. His last frost is average the 12th. Mine was the 30th. So he's got about 2 weeks more growing season on either end of the season. That makes a big difference in what he can select. His plant hardiness zone is 6A, and I think I was 5A or 5B. And so that's going to make a difference in the recommendations that this program is going to give to you. You can put in a mixed name here. We don't need to worry about that. Different bagging options. We won't worry about that right now. Several different options here now. Seeding method. Go ahead and click here, Gail. This is how are you going to seed this. And you can either drill it. You can choose broadcast with incorporation or broadcast without incorporation. And the difference in this is it's just going to recommend different seeding rates. Because if you broadcast, you need to up your populations because they're not going to come up as well if they're drilled. Now, this next one, the next cash crop, is really important because the species that you select, to some extent, are going to depend on what you're planting next because there are some things that work better than others. So we have a list of different cash crops there. So, Gail, let's build you a mix that you would plant after you harvest wheat in Emporia, Kansas. So you pick whatever you want there, and that way people know that I didn't rig it or anything. So what would your typical next crop? You probably come back with corn?
We'll say corn. I usually go the other way around, but we'll do corn.
Okay.
Most people here are going to plant
corn.
So.
So he's going to do corn as his next cash crop. The acres to plant, that can be changed on the next screen. And then you need to put in when are you going to plant it and when are you going to terminate it. So go ahead and click on there, Gail, and pick your seeding date. Okay. And then the termination date.
You're trying to get me in trouble here, aren't you?
Why is that?
Termination date will be April 1st. Corn planting date, that's right.
Well, it's got to be April 1st of the next year.
Oh, can I change that date?
Yeah, go the other way with your arrows.
Okay.
And so he's going to have some things that are going to grow through and some things that won't. So it knows right now that he's got 281 days in this period. And we'll show you where that comes into play later. Now there are, and again, these are up here because we had already been logged in. They typically would just be blank. So there's 3 goals that you can pick now. You get to pick up to 3 goals for this cover crop mix. So go ahead and click on this one, Gail, or unless you want to leave that as your number 1 goal. And for the goals, all this is building up to, we're going to give a score to each of these species. There's over 60 species in here, and it's going to give a score to each one of those as to how well it fits all the parameters that you have come up with. And so these are all the different goals that we have. The first goal will always count more towards the overall score than the second goal, and the second goal will count more than the third. You have to have at least 1 goal, but you don't have to have goals 2 and 3 if you don't want to, but you certainly can. So we'll let him pick his goals, and I have no idea what this will look like, so. Okay, go ahead and click next. Okay, so it's going to come up. It'll just kind of give you a summary of your geographic and weather information here. It knows that in this 281-day period that he's got chosen there, he's got about 2,800 growing degree days. Now, we need to get that fixed a little bit. That's all displaying based on base 50 growing degree days, which is how all warm season crops are calculated. Cool season crops would go off of base 40, and so we need to get that explained as well. It repeats his goals there, and then you can change the number of acres that you want to put in this mix right here. And so now we're going to start adding some crops, so he'll click on the Add button. And we've got this in legumes, grasses, brassicas, and broadleaves. It's always going to show up in that order. That doesn't mean legumes are the most important thing in this mix. That's just the way that we have them listed. And so what it's done now is it's gone through, and we need to go back through and look at a lot of sample mixes and tweak our numbers that are going into these calculations. And we'll eventually hide these numbers too, because I think they just kind of get in the way. But we have them broken into excellent, good, marginal, and not recommended for each of these species. And so it came up and said the cowpeas, mung beans, sun hemp are all going to be excellent choices, but there's a lot of good choices in here too. And just because something is down and good doesn't mean you can't use it. The only time that I would really say you don't want to do that is if it's in the not recommended category. And typically, well, that's because that's sold out. I don't recommend that. I don't have it. Isn't that a good answer, Dave? Usually what will put it down there is if it's completely out of the time for it to be planted. So if Gail was planting in March, then the cowpeas and mung beans would be down and not recommended because they're going to freeze out. It's just not going to work. Or if he's planting in October, same way they would be there. So go ahead and just go ahead and pick a few things here, Gail. When he picks these, what it's going to do, and we need to get a label in here, it's going to put a number right here. And what this number is that's the recommended full seeding rate if you were planting that cover crop all by itself. And we don't recommend that, but it gives you a way to try to determine, do I need 3 pounds of this or do I want 15 pounds? So with cowpeas, it was, I think, 49 pounds. So Gail might pick, 5, 6, 7 pounds. It depends on how many things he loads up in here. Now, I will say that when Gail puts in an order, the guys just cringe, because the list of seeds they have to go find, is like this.
It's not a boring day.
It's not a boring day when Gail calls. And so a new feature that Gail and people like him will like is you're no longer constrained to only having 4 or 5 or 6 that the old one had. You can just keep adding, and it'll just keep putting different things in there. And as he's going through there and doing that, again, here would be the recommended rates if it was planted by itself. And he's now going in and saying, I want 8 pounds of cowpeas, 5 pounds of mung beans. This is what he's actually saying I want in my mix. And as he builds these, there's a lot of information that's going to pop up over here about each of these species. First of all, it's going to tell you if it's a warm season, the WS, or a cool season, and then also if it's a broadleaf or a grass. The percent full rate right here is simply taking this number divided into this number and saying he's got 16% of a full rate of cowpeas. And the reason that that's such an important number is because a lot of people will say, well, in doing these diverse mixes, how many pounds of seed should I plant? Well, it depends on what seeds you got. Or a lot of people will say, how many seeds per square foot, or how many seeds per acre do I need? Well, that depends too, because there's, when you get into these very diverse mixes, pounds per acre and seeds per acre no longer apply, in our opinion. So what we have done is we just look at the percent of a full rate, and those are being added up right here. So far he's got 54% of a full rate. And we think that most cover crop mixes, diverse mixes, can be about 125% of a full rate. Or if you're doing a lot of mixing of warm and cool season together, they're not all growing at the same time, then we're comfortable with that number getting up to 150 and above. And I'm sure by the time Gail gets done with this, he's going to be up in that 150 plus range. And so that's that number that we look at on here to see if you've got enough seeds or if we think you've got too many. If you submit something and it's over 200%, probably going to call you up and say, you probably want to back off something here. I think that's just going to be a little too much seed out there. Or if you submit something and it's only 90%, I'm going to say, do you have some other stuff you're going to add to this? Because it's probably going to be a little thin. You're going to have some bare spots, and I don't know that you'll be happy with it. So as he continues to add different things, it just gives you different ways that this mix is, for each one of these species, what percent by weight, percent by seeds. The effective percent is what effect of the overall mix does that particular species now have. And it's simply an average of the percent by weight and the percent by seeds. Because again, the large seeded things are going to have a higher percent by weight and very low by percent of number of seeds. And so when we're doing all of these calculations, I didn't think it was fair to do either one of those, because one way it favored the large seeded things and the other way it favored small seeded. So I took the average of the two, and that's the number that we're using in all of our calculations. The one nice thing about this particular calculator is that everything that's going on is giving you real-time cost. These are our actual costs that are showing up here, cost per pound. And then this box right up here, as you build your mix, you see exactly what that mix is going to cost you per pound, per acre, and for the whole mix on all the acres that you've chosen. It also breaks it out by seed cost, inoculant cost, mixing cost, and bagging cost. And so we want to be very transparent in this and just show you where all those costs are. And it gives you a way of putting a mix together and seeing what that's going to cost. And you can use this even if you don't order from me. I can almost guarantee you that whoever you do order seed from, they're going to be pretty close. They're going to be, Dave's going to beat me on some things. I'll be cheaper on some things. Depends on how good a buy we got on it. But when it all comes down to the end, I would guess it's going to be pretty close in the end. So, but this will allow you to say, well, I like this mix, but it's $40 an acre. I really only had $30 budgeted, so let's go back and try to switch some things up and see what we can do to still have the numbers kind of where I want them, but maybe to get that price down a little bit. So as he's going through here and building this, and he'd have to explain his reasoning behind some of these. I won't go there. You'll have to ask him later. And I can see right now that we need to widen our boxes. Did you put like 1.5 pounds of Egyptian wheat? Well, it probably did. It just doesn't show up. Okay. I'm sure it's there. It's just not showing up.
Yeah, because on the rapeseed, I tried to do 0.25 and did the same thing.
Oh,
so
okay.
right. The box probably
All right. Well, you people that want to go to 2 decimals, I don't know.
Look at the headache I saved you from not putting this out.
Yeah, look at the headache you saved me. Just a few other things that as we go through here, if you get one of these up here and you decide, I really didn't want that one, you can either go back and change the species, or if you just click the trash can, it will just delete it out of there. The other thing that you can do, and these aren't all fully functional yet, but each one of these will have a little information icon here, and I'm pretty sure buckwheat works, so go ahead and click right there, Gail. If you have one of these species that you don't know what it is, you can click on it, and it will take you to a page on our website that tells you about all things buckwheat. And you can go down through there. It will have some pictures of the seed. A lot of this information came out of the SARE Managing Cover Crops book. Other stuff, we scoured other information sources and tried to compile it into one page. Go ahead and scroll down a little bit there. It's got different ratings on use, advantages. It'll talk about disadvantages. It's got all these different ratings on a 1 to 10 scale. Disadvantages, tolerances, planting information. And then usually at the bottom there will be some pictures of what that particular species looks like. So it's kind of nice because, you know, we've got, like say, over 60 species here. More than likely there's some of these that you aren't going to really be very familiar with. So go ahead and go back and just click at the top there. Now, up at the very top. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so that pretty well shows you all this. Now let's scroll down a little bit, Gail, and let's look at the numbers up top. Or I'm sorry, scroll up. There we go. Here's the last thing I want to kind of explain. Right now he's got 12 things in his mix. He's got 33 pounds. He's at 126% full rate, 697,000 seeds per pound. I think that all looks pretty good. He's got $30 in seed and about a $34 mix overall. And then these numbers, Elaine talked about carbon-nitrogen ratio. This is giving a prediction of the carbon-nitrogen ratio of this mix. And what it's doing is it's taking the growing period, it knows how many growing degree days are in that period. There's a table that it can go and it can look up each of these species. We have divided into 7 different plant growth stages, and it knows how many growing degree days it takes to get to each stage. Then it will look at the stage that it's in, and it looks at another table that will have a carbon-nitrogen ratio for that stage, because C to N ratio changes dramatically with plant growth stage. So that's how that's all being calculated. These are all on a 1 to 10 scale, with 1 being low and 10 being high, and we need to build some explanations in. And so he's got a really good grazing mix. He's got a 5 out of 10 on nitrogen fixation, so it's okay.
I need to go back because my goal was soil health and nitrogen, and I didn't achieve those.
Well, I mean, it depends.
Yeah.
You know, you still got a good mix. And so each one of these scores, as you go back through and you change either species or seeding rates, all those numbers will change. And so it just allows you to give a lot of what-if scenarios. What if I put oats in instead of rye, or what if I did turnips instead of radishes? You know, none of these are scientifically proven, but they're estimates. And it allows you to compare one mix to another. And that's the whole purpose of this, is not to necessarily know what the perfect mix is, but to give you some ideas of what this mix would look like as compared to this one. So greencoverseed.com is our website. You're welcome to go there, and this will be up and available in a day or two for people to use. And as you go through it, if you see things that don't work right, send me an email, because I guarantee you there will be things that won't work right. We're finding them all the time, just like the decimal point thing. So.